Okay, so for this video I'm gonna basically service this Newell reel. This is a 546 reel, typical reel that you're going to use for slide baiting. It's one of the most common sizes. We're going to be changing the handle, the star, the clicker kit. We're going to be upgrading the gear sleeve to a stainless gear sleeve. Usually stock is brass. We're going to be changing the drags, and we're also going to be changing the bearings. So basically a complete servicing of the reel. We're going to be using the grease that I carry. This is a high viscosity grease. It's a heavy thickness. I sell it in 2-ounce jars like this. So we're going to be using this. It's a good grease. I've got it on all my reels. I really like it. I'm happy with it. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and start. First thing we're going to do is remove the clicker side plate. I have the reel in free spool. As you can see, the lever here, I just put it in free spool so it makes it a little bit easier and there's not pressure on the spool. I pre-loosened some of the screws already. As you can see, I'm just going to go take those out. Put those on the side. For this, you're going to need a screwdriver. Depending on your reel, if it's slotted, you'll need a slotted screwdriver. If it's Phillips, then you're going to need a Phillips screwdriver, which I have right here. One of the benefits to having slotted screws is that they don't strip as easily as the Phillips. So my recommendation is you should, if you can get the slotted ones, I would get the slotted ones over Phillips. I sell those on my website. You can look on uluajunkies.com, and there's 2 different sizes depending on what kind of reel you use. Whenever you put the screws in the reel during servicing, I recommend putting lots of grease on the screws to prevent any kind of screws getting seized in the frame, so that way the screws don't strip. And we're going to go through that. Okay, so the side plate is off. If you look closely, the bearing is on my spool, so I'm just going to go ahead and take that off. But normally the bearing is in your side plate like that. You can see it right there. So I'm going to go ahead and remove the bearing. We're going to change the bearing. I've got some bearings here. These are ceramic bearings. I'm going to put them in. Newells take one bearing on one side, the clicker side, and it takes another bearing on the handle side. So we're going to go ahead and get these bearings out of the bag. Make sure you don't mix them up, your old and new ones. So put that on the side. For removing the bearing, you can use something like this. I got this at Home Depot. This is a extractor kit. It comes in a kit with other pieces like this. You can see the different bits, the tips. You can use something like this. You take the tip in there and you pull it out, or you can fork out a lot of money and have a custom bearing puller made, and that's what I got. And so how it works is I just stick it in there, I tighten it down, and then I'm able to grab it just like that. Okay, so we've got our bearing out on this side. We're going to change it. I'm going to put the old bearing away. I'm going to put the new bearing in. Put the reel on the side. We're going to change the clicker kit. If there was something wrong with your clicker, maybe there was something was damaged, cracked, maybe it's not working properly, or you got a graphite clicker and you want to upgrade to the metal ones. I carry these aftermarket clicker kits, and this is what it comes with. There's an anodized button. There's different colors. This one is gunmetal. It comes with a clicker spring. It comes with a new clicker dog, and it comes with a shim. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to remove this clicker kit. We're going to change it out and put in the aftermarket one, just to show you guys how. First thing you're going to do is remove this screw which holds the spring to the side plate. I don't know if you can see that. This screw, it's a Phillips and it can strip easily, so be careful when you're taking it out. I'm going to go ahead and remove that spring, put it on the side. save the screw because you're going to use the same screw to install the aftermarket clicker kit. Okay, so to remove the dog, you're going to pop this E-clip out. To do so, you can get a flathead screwdriver or just take one of your, if you've got something like this, which is that Home Depot extractor kit, you just stick it in the groove of the clip. If you can see right there, you stick it in there and then you're going to push it out. And you're going to want to have your hand cupped like this because the clip might go flying and you might lose it. And these things are really small and tiny and easy to lose. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and just pop it out. And there it is. This just so happened to come right off easily. Take off the dog. You should have the dog in the washer. And then the button will fall right out. Okay, so go ahead and put that on the side so you don't mix them up. Okay, to install the new kit, I'm going to start off with the button. I'm going to put the button in, then you're going to put your washer in, and then I'm going to put my clicker dog on top. You just sort of push it on there, make sure it goes on even. There we go. Okay, so go ahead and take your clip, your little E-clip, and you're going to pop it right on the top of the, there's a notch that sticks out past the clicker dog. You're going to go ahead and get it set in there. Okay, it should sort of push in, but it's not fully engaged. So what I do is I just take the end of like a screwdriver or something flat and small, and I'm going to push it in just like so. And you should see it sort of clip in there. There you go. And you can see the clip is now engaged into that little notch on the dog. Okay? And then there's these plastic notches that it should sit in. Just make sure it's sitting in those notches. Okay. So you can see how it's got those black plastic notches there. So it's nicely seated in there. It's nice and flat. It's not sticking out past these mounting humps, and it's not sticking way out. That means I've got it the correct way. If I were to flip it over, this thing would be popping up. Okay, so you're going to take your screw, you're going to install it back on. Be careful not to over tighten this, because like I said, this screw can strip very easily. Okay, and we've changed our clicker kit and we've changed our bearing. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and put this on the side now, and we're going to work on the rest of the reel. You can take your spool out, put that on the side. For these, if you don't have a tib frame, you're going to have an inner ring that's mounted to your basin bars. For these, what I would recommend is when you service the reel, go ahead and unscrew these and add grease and then screw them back in. I did these already, but I'm just going to show you. If you're having a hard time removing these screws, they're a Philister head, which means that the head is nice and high. You can take some sort of pliers and you can go ahead and grab them, and you can actually turn them with the pliers or vice grips if you're having a hard time removing them. But just be careful that you don't break them off in there, because then your frame will be useless. So you're going to want to take your grease and basically just get a big old blob of this grease, just like that, and install it back in. And this is just to ensure that the it helps prevent the screws to seize. Because typically what happens is you have a stainless steel screw you have an aluminum frame, and then there's salt water, and basically the difference in metals with the salt water, it causes that electrolysis, it causes corrosion, the materials can seize in there, and you'll have a hard time breaking it out. You may have to drill it out or tap it out. Okay, so you're going to want to do those for every single bolt in the frame. I would recommend doing it at least once a year. If you service your reel once a year, I would do it once a year. Okay, we're going to go on to this side. This is the handle side. Once again, remove all the screws off the side plate with a Phillips or a slotted. I've already loosened some of these already, so just to save time. Once again, on the handle side, you're going to want to unscrew all of these and add grease. I already did, but it's basically the same thing that I showed you earlier. You can actually see some of the grease kind of sticking out. Put that on the side. For the handle side, first thing you're going to do is remove the cap nut. You can use some pliers, but when you use pliers, sometimes it can slip, strip, or you can scratch your handle. So I recommend just in your tackle box or wherever you put your stuff to service your reels, just keep a like a crescent wrench or a socket wrench. This is a 9/16. Go ahead and undo your cap nut. Depending on how your gear sleeve is, your bridge plate is, you may have a screw here or you may have a clip. If you have a clip, you do the same thing. You're going to use your pick or a screwdriver. You're going to cup and you're going to push it out. Make sure you catch that clip. This one, for instance, has a screw, so I'm going to unscrew it. Just unscrew that. Okay. Take your handle off, put all the washers on the side. Typically with your handle, you'll have a metal washer on top and then you have a metal washer on the bottom. The one on the bottom is very important because it'll actually sit on the gear sleeve like so, and it won't go down any further because of the notch that's right here. So it locks that handle in. You want to make sure that when you have your stack oriented with all your washers and your star and everything, that your star and the washers don't go past this notch. That way it ensures the handle isn't sitting on the star and it's actually sitting on the notch, so it's locked in. Okay, we're going to remove the star. You just unwind it off the gear sleeve. If you have trouble with the star, you can add oil or add grease. Sometimes the stars do get sort of stuck on there. We're going to put that on the side. Then we're going to take off the 4 bridge plate screws. You can see them right here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Those are usually Phillips, but sometimes slotted, but sometimes they are Phillips. These screws are a Philister 640 screw. Go ahead and remove all of those. It should lift right off. Your bearing will be right in there. If you have a large bearing cap, you can unscrew this and you can service your bearings that way, but because I have the side plate off, I'm just going to go ahead and remove it. I'm going to take my bearing puller, put it in there in the middle, tighten it down. You're going to pull that out. Pulled right out. As you can see, this bearing is at the end of its life. It is hash. So we're going to put our new bearing in, but first I'm going to clean it out a little bit because it's kind of gunky in there. And you don't want gunk in there. You can take a Q-tip or just the edge of like a paper towel and I'm just going to clean it out, inspect it. And it is dirty. Okay, put your new bearing in. get oriented here. Okay. So, okay, let's get straightened out here. Put my bearing puller on the side. When you're servicing your reels, it's important to stay organized. I'm familiar with Newells, but if you're not too sure, it's nice to have everything sort of organized. So I'm going to go ahead and put my new bearing in. Okay, I got it popped in there, and we're going to put this on the side. For the bridge plate, which is this piece right here, okay, you're going to go ahead and remove the entire stack. I'm changing out the gear sleeve. This is the gear sleeve. Newell normally makes them in brass. I'm going to be installing a stainless one. So this is the stainless gear sleeve. It's a stronger material. It'll last it a little longer. It's important. The threads on the stainless and the sprocket on the gear sleeve here can take a little bit more of a beating because this is a harder metal. Okay, so what you're going to do is you would put the gear sleeve down, and then there's two dogs on this 5 series. There's one right here and one right here. If you're using a 4 series and below, you're only going to have the left dog. But you basically just pull the dogs down, and then the gear sleeve should just fall down, and you can see them how they're engaged now. As I turn it, they're properly working. Okay, we're gonna grease this up since I got everything off. So I'm gonna take my grease. I'm just gonna go with the paper towel on my finger, but you can use a Q-tip or your hand or however you want to do it. A little wooden spatula, and I'm gonna grease my jack handle, the spring, around the pinion gear, the dogs, the base of the sleeve. I'm gonna also grease the underneath part right over there, and just glob it on there nice and thick. Okay, just like that. If you really want to get into a lot of detail, you can actually strip this whole plate down, clean it, completely strip off all the old grease, apply all the new grease, but we're not going to do that in this video. It's not necessarily required that you'd have to do that every time you service your reel. Okay, for the brakes. Now we're going to change the brakes. So I have here your typical carbon fiber drag kit. Comes with 3 large washers and a smaller undergear washer. The undergear washer will go right on top of your gear sleeve before you put all your gears. If your reel comes with this gray washer, I would advise just leave this gray washer in and go ahead and install that. Unless this is broken, or your reel came with a carbon fiber washer or some other washer and it's damaged, then install the carbon fiber washer in there. But if you've got the gray one and it looks good still, go ahead and use that one. So you can save this for later in case this one ever goes. And the reason being is this lasts a little bit longer. Okay, for the drag stack, go ahead and empty out all your drags. Once again, you can take your extractor toolkit. Make sure you get all those discs out. For the 5 series, this is the orientation. I have schematics on my website which might help you in case you're not sure. But here's your orientation. You've got a drag which goes on the bottom. So these are my old ones. I'm going to go ahead and take those out, put them on the side, and I'm going to put my new ones in the orientation. So we're going to take that first drag, put it on the bottom of the gear. You're going to take your second metal washer, put it down. Take your second drag, put it in. The middle metal washer should have notches, and that'll fit right into the notches of your gear. Take your third and last large drag, put it on top, metal washer, and then you'll have a cone shaped washer. It's got a slight hump to it. I don't know if you can see that. and that's going to go on top. Okay, and all of this will go on top of your gear sleeve. For the drags, I like to install them dry. You get a longer service life out of your drags because they don't get all soggy, and you get a little bit stronger grab, so you get a little bit higher drag pressure on your drags when you install them dry versus adding grease. Okay, go ahead, you're going to put your main gear on with all your washers and just make sure they're all seated properly and they didn't lift up. And this is where we're at so far. If you want to check, make sure your dogs are engaging. So turn it and then turn it back, and then you should feel them lock. The next thing you're going to do is install your spacer. Okay, now we're ready to put it back into the side plate. So take your drag stack, take your side plate with your bearing still inside, make sure it didn't fall out. Go ahead and put it right on top. The spacer should fill right over there. Make sure it's nice and flat and pressed firmly against the side plate and you don't feel it lifting. And we're going to tighten up those bridge plate screws. Keep it from moving. And I like to tighten diagonally, so I start here and then I go to this side, so I can ensure it's seated properly. Okay, so our bridge plate is now installed again. We've got a new stainless steel gear sleeve. We've changed the drags, we changed the bearing, we added grease. Now I'm going to go ahead and install this back on my frame. So you just put it right on top of your frame. Get your screws. Okay, so I've got my 5 screws here. For the screws, what you're going to want to do is same thing, lots of grease. Anytime when it comes to threads and screws with Newells, lots of grease. So take your jar of grease, go ahead and get a big old scoop of grease like this, just like that, and put it in, tighten it down. And you may actually get some grease oozing out at the top of the bolt head, and that's fine. That ensures there's a nice seal at the top. So in this case you can see how the grease just oozed out of there, and that's fine. You just go to get your paper towel and you just give it a little wipe. At least you know there's a sufficient grease in the bolt. Okay, so you're going to do that for every single one. Put it in there. Just tighten them all down. If you're turning it and it's not going down, that means you probably have the screws misaligned with your frame, so just shift the side plate and readjust and then try again. Once again, don't over tighten any of these screws, just tighten it down enough to where it's nice and tight, it's not loose, it doesn't move around, but then you don't have to put a whole lot of pressure and torque on it. Okay, so we've got our right side plate installed. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change out my star. So my stock star is right here. This is the aftermarket one that I'm putting on. So it's anodized aluminum. It's a little bit more comfortable. It's got a little bit more of an aggressive look, and it's lighter. So we're going to go ahead and change out this star. So My reel previously had 2 washers that went first, and then my star was there. But because this star features a raised mounting space underneath, as you can see the difference, how raised it is. You don't necessarily need these washers anymore because you've got that raised mounting space. The purpose of this is to make contact with this gear spacer, which then makes contact with your drag stack. So you've got a nice solid mounting space where you don't need additional washers. So you may or may not have to remove washers when you change out your star, and that's fine. And that's actually preferred because a lot of times these washers can crack. So go ahead and install it. Just make sure when you're threading it on, you don't cross thread it. So go lightly like this, how I'm doing. If you want to, you can put some oil or grease, kind of lubricate it. When you first install them, it might be a little tight, and that's fine. Okay? And that gives you an idea. You can see that big raised mounting space right there. And it fits nicely. Looks very nice. This star that I'm using is the gunmetal star, and this is available on my website as well. Okay? Next, what we're going to have is I'm going to put what they call, it's a little wavy washer, and it's sort of like a tension washer, but you don't need it. But because I have a big gap here between my star and the notch, I don't want my star to be too loose, so I'm going to put a tension washer right there. And then after you put the tension washer, you're going to put your flat square washer. That's going to go on top, and that's what your handle is going to sit on. And for the handle, I'm changing out my stock P series handle to an aftermarket modified Shimano handle, which I sell. These are a lot more comfortable and somewhat more durable. Okay, so as you can see, it fits nicely just like that, right on top. Where am I here? There we go. Okay. I like to add a little bit of grease on the threads before I close everything up. And then I also add some grease where the washers go and on the interior hole for your handle. And that helps with the anodization, corrosion, your handle from seizing up. Okay, go ahead and put your top washer on top. Now you're going to put your screw in or your clip, depending on what kind of bridge plate you have. Just like so. Okay, and then next is going to be your plastic washer, which should lock in there, and then your cap nut. Same thing, whenever you're threading on your star or your cap nut, just make sure you do so very lightly. Don't force it. Make sure it's threading on evenly. That way you don't cross thread. So as you can see here, because it will cross thread, you can try and screw this thing on several times and it will actually start cross threading. Okay, so that went on good. And then go ahead and tighten it down. There we go, just like that. Don't tighten too much, because then you can actually cause this cap nut to press against that screw that we put in underneath. So just make sure you want to go tight, and then maybe back it off a slight notch, like that. Okay? So we've got our handle side plate installed, we've got our new star, new bearing, new drags. We're going to put everything back together, and that's going to wrap up our servicing with all the upgrades. Okay, my spool, my jack handle is still in free spool, so I'm going to put this spool in. Just make sure you don't have any line that's pinching on the inner rings like how that is. If it is, just feed it through, otherwise it won't install properly. Okay. Now we're going to finish up with our clicker side plate. Take your grease, go ahead and smother it on that dog just like that. Smother it on the screw there. That helps protect it. Don't put it on the bearing. It will kind of slug it up a little. It'll make it a little sluggish. Okay, take my inner ring. Right, and then we're going to go ahead and just install it the same way we did the other side. And make sure when you're installing it, you have the clicker button disengaged, because right now it's engaged and it's having a hard time going in because the dog is over here. So you disengage it and then it sits nice and flush. So just remember to do that, because it will cause some, it won't sit properly. Okay, same thing on this side for the screws. You're going to just go ahead and dip it in the grease and install them. So I put the reel together. I've got all the screws put in. I added grease. All the screws are installed. Just wipe down any excess grease. We installed a new star. We installed a new handle. We changed the drags, changed the stainless steel gear sleeve. We installed that gear sleeve in. We changed the bearings on both sides, greased everything up. We got the new gunmetal clicker kit installed, as you can see. You're just going to test the function of the reel. So crank it, put it in free spool, make sure it's loose. Okay, make sure the free spool is working. Test your clicker, go ahead and engage it. Okay, sounds good. And test your drag. So go ahead, tighten your drag down, pull some line out. Tighten it a little bit more. Pull some line out. It should be harder to pull. Okay, and then loosen it up, and then it should get easier to pull. Just like that. And that's it. And that's how to service your Newell reel. How to add all those upgrades, grease it up, change the brakes and bearings. I hope you enjoyed this video. You can visit my website, uluajunkies.com, if you have questions about these products, or if you want to purchase these products. If you have any questions, you can contact me on uluajunkies.com. Thank you. Aloha.